So, Judge Juan Merchan just dropped a bombshell ruling that completely dismantles Trump's defense strategy by admitting evidence that Trump's own lawyers desperately tried to keep sealed. The evidence includes authenticated recordings from inside Trump Organization meetings where Trump explicitly directed the falsification of business records to hide hush money payments. These recordings weren't just casual conversations. They captured Trump personally instructing his CFO Alan Weisselberg on exactly how to structure the reimbursements to Michael Cohen. But guess what? Trump's voice is crystal clear, saying, "Make sure this looks like legal fees, nothing else." It's honestly hard to believe Trump's lawyers thought they could suppress recordings where their client literally confesses to the crime. This isn't just about campaign finance violations anymore. We're talking about documented conspiracy, systematic fraud, and evidence so damaging that legal experts are calling it the smoking gun prosecutors have been searching for. And trust me, the judge's decision to allow this evidence changes everything about Trump's criminal trial. Let me fill you in on what's been happening. So, this all centers around Trump's Manhattan criminal trial for falsifying business records related to the Stormy Daniels hush money payment back in 2016. Trump's been maintaining his innocence, claiming he never directed anyone to falsify records and that all payments to Michael Cohen were legitimate legal expenses. From the get-go, his defense team positioned this as a case about private business transactions that had nothing to do with election interference. Whether it was filing motions to suppress evidence, challenging witness credibility, or claiming prosecutorial overreach, Trump's lawyers really cemented themselves as fighters trying to keep crucial evidence away from the jury. But here's where the rubber meets the road. We're now deep into pretrial proceedings with the trial, set to begin in March 2025. Witness lists are being finalized, evidence is being reviewed, jury selection protocols are being established. This mess is unfolding because prosecutors from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office uncovered these recordings during their investigation of Alan Weisselberg's cooperation agreement, and Trump's team has been fighting tooth and nail to keep them out of court. And guess who's stuck right in the middle? Yep, Trump's entire legal team. They're supposed to be mounting a vigorous defense. But here's the kicker. Judge Merchan just ruled that the recordings are not only admissible, but central to proving Trump's direct involvement in the conspiracy. And before we go any further, let's be real for a second. Attorney-client privilege doesn't cover conversations where lawyers are helping clients commit crimes. That's the crime fraud exception, established in United States v. Zolan back in 1989. Now, back to the matter at hand. Reports from around October 27th revealed just how devastating this evidence actually is. According to court filings reviewed by CNN, the recordings span multiple dates between December 2016 and February 2017, capturing at least 7 separate conversations where Trump discusses the payment scheme. In one recording, Trump explicitly tells Weisselberg the $130,000 needs to be doubled to cover taxes, then add a bonus. Call it $420 total, but make sure every check says legal retainer. Talk about strong words. Essentially, Trump was orchestrating the entire fraudulent scheme while pretending publicly that he knew nothing about any payments to Stormy Daniels. And this wasn't a private conversation. Multiple Trump Organization employees were present during these recorded meetings, making them all potential witnesses who can corroborate the authenticity of the recordings. This announcement sent shockwaves through Trump's legal team because it raised all sorts of questions. If Trump's own voice directing criminal activity is played for the jury, what possible defense could explain that away? Now, this isn't the first time we've seen evidence emerge that contradicts Trump's public statements. Trump's relationship with the truth really only exists when it serves his interests. Whenever evidence emerges that proves his guilt, he immediately pivots to new explanations or attacks the legal system itself. We've spotted this pattern time and time again. Just think about how he handled the classified documents case. First he claimed he had no documents, then he said they were planted, then he claimed he declassified them with his mind, and finally he argued presidents can take whatever they want. Then there was his response to the Georgia indictment. Trump initially denied any calls to Georgia officials. Then, when the recording emerged of him asking for 11,780 votes, he claimed it was a perfect call and that finding votes meant something completely different. And let's not forget how he responded to the January 6th investigation. He went from claiming it was a peaceful protest, to saying he wasn't involved, to arguing he was exercising free speech, to claiming presidential immunity for official acts. Even in the Jean Carroll case, Trump's story shifted from never meeting her to she's not his type, to claiming absolute immunity, to arguing the verdict was excessive after losing twice. Now, it looks like the same pattern is emerging here. This pattern is becoming all too familiar. You can deny reality all you want and create alternative explanations every single day. But the moment actual recordings of your voice directing crimes emerge, those denials become worthless. So, what exactly do these recordings reveal about Trump's involvement? Well, it all boils down to premeditation and direct participation. The recordings capture Trump not just approving the payments, but architecting the entire cover-up scheme. He discusses specific amounts, timing of payments, and most importantly, how to disguise them in Trump Organization records. Ultimately, this evidence proves Trump wasn't some passive executive who signed checks without knowing what they were for. As the central figure in the conspiracy, Trump's voice on these recordings reveals sophisticated knowledge of the scheme. He references tax implications and calculates gross-up amounts. His approach seemed to be managing every detail while maintaining plausible deniability. At first, Trump's lawyers tried to claim attorney-client privilege covered these recordings. They argued the presence of any lawyer in the room made the entire conversation privileged. But as the prosecutors presented their arguments to Judge Merchan, some issues started cropping up. The recordings showed lawyers actively participating in the fraud. Privilege doesn't apply when attorneys help commit crimes, and several conversations had no attorneys present at all. While Trump's team was desperately trying every legal maneuver, predictably, the judge began seeing through their tactics. Former federal prosecutor Andrew Weissman noted on MSNBC that according to established case law from October 26th, these recordings represent the most damaging evidence he's seen in a white-collar criminal case. This was the moment Trump's lawyers began to sweat a little. You see, Trump's defense strategy relies on reasonable doubt, witness credibility attacks, and overall claiming political persecution. They don't want to be tied to recordings where Trump's own voice proves criminal intent. That's definitely not the acquittal they seek. And then Trump's team went ahead and made a move that, according to legal experts, was a serious misstep. They started arguing that the recordings were illegally obtained and figured they should claim Weisselberg violated New York's two-party consent laws. They even considered arguing the recordings were deep fakes or manipulated. But then, when prosecutors presented authentication evidence from 3 separate forensic experts, Judge Merchan absolutely lost it. In the judge's eyes, making frivolous arguments is just wasting the court's time. Claiming deepfakes without any evidence? That's pure desperation. Any lawyer who dares to mislead the court risks sanctions and credibility loss. Here's where it gets interesting. Now, this left Trump's defense team in a tight spot. On one side, they really need to maintain some credible defense strategy. The jury will completely dismiss them if they make obviously false arguments. On the flip side, they actually have to deal with recordings of their client confessing to crimes. That means figuring out how to explain Trump's own words, minimize damage, and create reasonable doubt. The tricky part is all of that requires acknowledging the recordings are real while somehow arguing they don't prove criminal intent, so Trump's lawyers are caught in a bind. They can either keep denying the undeniable, which means losing all credibility with the jury, and that only makes conviction more likely and paints Trump as obviously guilty. Or they can pivot to admitting Trump made the payments, which means trying to argue they weren't criminal, but that'll definitely contradict everything Trump has said publicly for years. It's a tough situation, and that's the mess Trump creates for his lawyers. He demands complete vindication and wants them to argue his innocence without budging, but then he leaves evidence everywhere proving his guilt. He's not shy about throwing lawyers under the bus when strategies fail. This whole scenario is causing major stress within Trump's legal team. If Trump's own words on tape prove his guilt, and the judge is allowing all this evidence, every lawyer is left wondering if they're defending the indefensible. Those attorneys trying to maintain professional credibility while defending Trump are now worried sick about their reputations being destroyed. Meanwhile, Trump reportedly believes his lawyers aren't fighting hard enough, and that they should be more aggressive in attacking the judge and prosecutors. Things became even more intense when Todd Blanche, Trump's lead attorney, had to acknowledge in court that the recordings were authentic. He had been pushing for suppression based on technical legal grounds and criticized the prosecution for withholding the recordings until recently. When even Trump's own lawyer can't deny the authenticity of evidence, you know you're in a world of hurt. The prosecution decided to reveal additional evidence during the hearing. On October 28th, Assistant District Attorney Matthew Colangelo presented transcripts showing that the recorded conversations directly corroborate testimony from Michael Cohen and documents from Trump Organization records. He pointed out that Trump's statements on the recordings perfectly match the fraudulent entries in the company's books. According to former Manhattan prosecutor Rebecca Roife, who appeared on CNN's legal analysis program, the alignment between the recordings, documents, and witness testimony creates an overwhelming case. This is what prosecutors dream of: the defendant's own words, proving every element of the crime. The legal process moved pretty quickly, and Judge Mershon recognized the significance. After all, every piece of evidence that corroborates the prosecution's theory strengthens their case exponentially. And let me tell you, the judge didn't hold back with his ruling. It was a major blow for Trump's defense strategy. Judge Mershon declared that the recordings were properly obtained, fully authenticated, and highly probative of Trump's criminal intent. That's legal speak for saying, this evidence proves what prosecutors claim it proves. There's no valid reason to exclude it. The jury needs to hear Trump's own words. A New York judge admitting such damaging evidence creates a real stir. It's a significant move, essentially, ensuring Trump will face the most damaging possible evidence at trial. This is a huge deal that fundamentally changes the trial dynamics. Legal experts are noting that we haven't seen evidence this directly damaging to a former president since the Nixon tapes in Watergate. Lawrence Tribe, a Harvard constitutional scholar, went on MSNBC and made a statement that really should catch everyone's attention. He said that these recordings transform this from a circumstantial case to a direct evidence case. When jurors hear Trump's voice directing the crime step by step, conviction becomes almost inevitable. Just think about that for a moment. This could mean actual prison time for a former president. And this is coming from one of America's most respected legal scholars. Former federal judge Michael Luttig, a conservative who's been critical of Trump, mentioned that no jury could acquit after hearing such clear evidence of criminal intent. When legal experts from both sides start using words like inevitable conviction and overwhelming evidence, that's the moment to really pay attention. Now, here's the kicker. So, let's break down what this evidentiary ruling could mean, because it's not just a devastating legal development, it has serious consequences for Trump's political future and American democracy. First up is the immediate legal impact. Trump is already facing 4 separate criminal indictments, and his legal jeopardy is mounting. His attorneys are getting anxious about the March 2025 trial date, which is definitely adding to the tension. The revelation that Trump's own voice directing crimes will be played for the jury, and honestly, that's not the best look for someone claiming total innocence. Most folks in America have a basic understanding that when you're caught on tape committing crimes, even if they don't always follow every legal development, conviction usually follows. Prosecutors are definitely planning to maximize this evidence. They'll argue that Trump's recorded words prove consciousness of guilt and criminal intent, and they'll have Trump's own voice backing up every element of their case. This is going to be Exhibit A through Z in proving Trump's guilt. You can expect to see these recordings becoming the centerpiece of the prosecution's opening statements, closing arguments, and witness examinations. Now, let's touch on what this means for Trump's other criminal cases. Judge Mershon's ruling sets a precedent for admitting damaging evidence against Trump, potentially influencing other judges to be less deferential to Trump's privilege claims. But by having such clear evidence of Trump directing criminal activity in one case, it undermines his credibility in all cases. Prosecutors in Georgia, Florida, and Washington, D.C. are now poised to argue pattern evidence, showing Trump has a history of directing illegal schemes, which complicates things for Trump's defense across all jurisdictions. Yet, prosecutors probably felt they had no other choice. If they didn't use such powerful evidence when it existed, their cases would appear weak and politically motivated. This situation shines a massive spotlight on accountability for powerful figures. At the heart of the issue is whether former presidents can be held accountable for crimes or if they exist above the law. If Trump escapes conviction despite recorded confessions, it could totally change how our justice system operates. The American legal system was designed with the principle that no one is above the law. The founders explicitly rejected monarchy and wanted to ensure even the most powerful could face justice. But Trump has always been uncomfortable with those limitations. He believes presidents should have absolute immunity. If recorded confessions can't secure convictions, that's a significant blow to rule of law, and it opens the door for future presidents to commit crimes with impunity. So, the implications of this case reach far beyond just Trump's fate. It's about establishing whether American democracy includes real accountability. Each time Trump escapes consequences, commits crimes, or attacks the justice system, it weakens our democratic institutions. It starts making criminal behavior by leaders feel normal. Think about it. If Trump can be recorded directing crimes and still avoid prison, what's to stop the next president from doing worse? If confessing on tape isn't enough for conviction, what's to prevent complete lawlessness? These precedents don't just affect Trump, they shape our democracy's future. And that's pretty dangerous. Democracy relies on those accountability mechanisms, assuming that people in power will face consequences for crimes, even when they're wealthy and powerful. When accountability crumbles, democracy itself starts to falter. Looking ahead to the March 2025 trial and the election, it's clear that all of this is going to have some significant effects. We're still 4 months from jury selection, but the evidence being revealed now is bound to influence public opinion. If the story playing out is one of Trump caught red-handed on recordings directing crimes, that spells trouble for his political comeback. Voters usually don't reward criminals. They want leaders with integrity. Right now, Trump isn't offering either of those, so expect prosecutors to ensure these recordings become public knowledge. After Trump's recorded voice directing crimes enters the public consciousness, there are folks who believe that supporting him becomes indefensible. They're promising justice will be served regardless of political power or wealth. That message might just hit home for a lot of voters, including some former Trump supporters. So, here's the deal. Judge Merchan just admitted recordings of Trump personally directing the falsification of business records to hide illegal hush money payments. This isn't just about campaign finance violations. It's about whether recorded confessions from former presidents can secure convictions in American courts. If Trump beats this case despite being recorded directing the crime, then we're basically saying evidence doesn't matter anymore. That would mean we're stepping into a completely new realm where political power provides immunity from prosecution. It's about so much more than just Trump's criminal trial. It's about whether we genuinely have equal justice under law or if we're just pretending, while the powerful escape accountability. So, keep an eye on this. Things are just heating up. The trial approaches, more evidence is emerging, and Trump's recorded confessions will soon be played in open court. The next few months are going to be crucial. The stakes have never been higher, the evidence stronger, and the outcome more unpredictable.